This is Real Talk, hosted by Learning Point Group, where we talk with everyday leaders about real leadership issues. And today we have the pleasure of talking with Cody Goldberg. Cody, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm really good. Thank you for having me here.
It's so great to have you on here. You and I talked a little bit before today. Your story is amazing. And so I'm looking forward to you being able to share it with the people that listen in on these Real Talk episodes that we're doing. So Cody, I'm going to give you a chance to tell your story. I'd like to start though by your official name, if I'm getting this right, is G. Cody QJ Goldberg, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what's the story behind that?
Those are some of the initials for my full name. The full name on the birth certificate is Garfield Cody Quentin Jeffrey Goldberg. And the short answer to the name is that I was born in San Francisco in 1969. The longer answer is that my parents specifically wanted me to have aliases if I needed to avoid the Vietnam War. So even though I had just been born, the Vietnam War was going on then, and they didn't support that effort. So they wanted me to have a lot of different choices of different names I could use. Each specific name had a very important reason. The long and short of it is Garfield is for John Garfield, their favorite actor. Cody, they took as a message from God because the day I was born, there was a love letter mistakenly put in our post office box addressed to somebody named Cody. And they thought that was a sign from God to give me that name. Quentin was an Indian chief whom they admired, and Jeffrey was my mother's maiden name. So altogether, it's a big soup of names. When my father passed 20 years ago, I started using all the initials. For most of my life, I've just been Cody Goldberg. But when he passed away, I kind of thought I would honor him because I know those names were in large part a lot of his influence. I think my mom just snuck in her maiden name for the most part. But that sets the stage for definitely a life meant to be lived in an unusual fashion, I would say. And interestingly, connected to that, my father was the first person, the first father to demand that he be allowed to stay in the delivery room when I was born. So he was one of those early adopters of recommending, not just recommending, but demanding that he be present for my birth. And I grew up with that story, and that also set the stage for not being afraid to step forward when something's not right and ask to make a change. So it's very much embedded in my DNA to be a little different with the name and to step forward when something's not quite right and do something about it. So maybe that's a good segue into what we're going to talk about, since I used up a lot of airtime on my name already.
No, that's awesome, and it does lay the groundwork for what we're going to talk about. You and I spent maybe, Cody, 12 minutes together, 15 minutes together the other day, and it was remote, it was virtual, it was on a Zoom session like this, but I picked up really quickly that you have that kind of personality where you feel like I felt like I knew you for a long time. I felt like we were friends, and I can see that that's been part of just your history too. And I want you to be able to share with us, if we can go back to, we now know why you got your name, and we know your father was there when you were born, but what else might, and we're going to get to the more recent things that are really, really important to cover, but to lay that groundwork, can you share with us just a little bit about your upbringing and some of the experiences you had, I think, that contributed to what you've decided to do with your career and with your life now? Even with your children, right? So share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, so my parents were bona fide hippies, San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury hippies. Like many of their friends, they moved across the Golden Gate Bridge as the 60s were coming to a close into Marin County, California. And most certainly the place that I grew up in and the people I was lucky to call the community I grew up in were very much committed to healthy childhoods for all of us. It was very much a passionate focus for all of them, and essentially there was an overthrow of the local school district, a very peaceful overthrow, but a bunch of the hippies got elected to the school board and they created a brand new school. They called it the open classroom. And a big part of the philosophy of open classroom was that children would select their learning from the earliest ages, select when they would learn and what they would learn. And so anarchy and freedom and all of that. And I wouldn't say it necessarily always worked perfectly for everyone. No system really is fail-safe, but I have memories literally from as early as almost kindergarten, I believe, sitting around in multi-age groups of kids talking about the difference between intrinsically motivated activities and extrinsically motivated activities. And that is sort of, it's a very powerful force in my life now to this day in recognizing how to motivate people, or how to also tap into my own motivations, to tap into my own why. Intrinsic motivators, right, are so much more important than any extrinsic forces you could put on people. So that's a very early memory. That's literally kindergarten. The community I grew up in valued play, valued equity, and valued healthy communities, really. So I think a lot of the rest of my life has been in trying to create scenarios that are somewhat similar to my childhood, because it was so positive.
That's awesome. You're probably going to go here anyway, but I know you told me about when you took a venture to Mexico, that experience. It wasn't just a trip. It was right. It was a journey. And you developed a talent for music. You discovered your talent for music along the way too. So talk about that for a minute.
I would say that I discovered that I'm not that talented at music, but that I enjoy it. That's for sure. Okay, so forgive me. I think I have some gaps to fill there. I'll do my best. So from kindergarten, the rest of my school career was not always in that open classroom. I actually bounced around from different systems that were within the same school. If we're talking about my leadership journey, I did run for and successfully was elected to student body president my 8th grade year. And then I went on to high school up here in the Pacific Northwest at Lincoln High School in downtown Portland, which was a great shift of experience from a school of just 40 kids in my class, my 8th grade class, to my freshman class at Lincoln High School was 450 kids. And I fell absolutely in love with the Pacific Northwest and all things Portland. Decided I wanted to pursue a career in filmmaking, and I went to New York University. I thought because that was the best film school in the country other than USC down in LA, I really wanted to go to New York. That's what I pursued for quite a while. And I was sort of a tragic case of a failed filmmaker in Los Angeles. Came back north, had a bunch of odd jobs for a few years, coaching soccer teams, just really a mishmash of different jobs. Now back to your Mexico story. After some time of being a substitute school teacher, because I thought I would make the world a better place through being a teacher, through a happenstance meeting with some friends, now friends down in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, I was invited to join a percussion band, loosely called a percussion band. We were really a glorified drum circle that would pass the hat, and basically, busking for loose change. And so I was age 30. I was dropping out to spend a year in Mexico playing drums, and my parents could not have been more proud.
They like that.
So I spent one glorious year in Mexico, learning Spanish, and I think reassessed my values in terms of what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life. And when I came back up to Portland, Oregon from that 1 year in Mexico, I was playing soccer on a team of mostly Adidas employees. This can be our transition to my sort of career. It's still all just one life, right? I don't even segment my career, but I stumbled into this 14-year career in mostly brand marketing, a fair bit of product marketing and event marketing, but in essence, always brand marketing for the most part with Adidas. And that's how I came to be connected with you all through Molly, who is a phenomenal coach and trainer. And it really also dovetails to how we came to know each other. I went to her classroom at Adidas on leadership, and we were sitting in a classroom setting in rows. And in my old drum circle Mexico days, I remembered the power of the circle and how much I appreciate sitting in a circle with people because everyone's equal and everyone can see each other. Yeah. And I recommended that we sit in a circle to Molly. And really the rest is now history, because had I not done that, I wouldn't be here speaking with you right now.
Well, yeah, you made an impact on Molly. Molly is a longtime friend of mine, partner, team member at Learning Point. And she became very good friends with you because of the influence that you had in that classroom, which now I kind of get that maybe some of that went all the way back to your early grade school years, the open classroom concept that you had back then.
We sat in circles, yep.
And so I want to jump forward for just a minute and then go back to that point when you were at Adidas, because I want everyone that's listening to this to now know what Harper's Playground is, right? You're the founder of Harper's Playground. You have a daughter named Harper. And that was a pivot point for you, or a turning point for you when you founded that after your career at Adidas and RedBull. And so that's where we're going to end up on this discussion, is you talking about that, right? But I want people to understand what that is now so that they can then even more appreciate the experience that you had at Adidas and RedBull leading up to that, right? So that's where we're going to head. But you spent some time, 14 years at Adidas. Is that right?
It was actually, my marketing career spanned 14 years. For 3 years, I left Adidas and worked for RedBull energy drink.
Okay.
And then I was hired back to Adidas after those 3 years to my former boss's role in sports marketing.
Gotcha. Now, Adidas, a global brand, they've been a client of Learning Point. That's where you and Molly met originally. There's lots of leadership experiences and lessons and styles and different approaches, all of that. It's probably very eclectic. What would you say if you had to pick the top 3 things that you gleaned the most when it comes to leadership from your experience at Adidas and Red Bull, your corporate experience? What would you say those top 3 things were?
That's awesome. Thank you. I actually, no, seriously.
Take your time.
I collect wisdom along my path as best as I'm able. And in everything I collect or I redistribute, I try to break it into 3. I try to limit it to 3. So 3 is a very powerful number to me. And so I appreciate that. I think these are the 3 lessons that I've gleaned in those 14 years of professional experience that I absolutely think I had in my heart before. So they were really reinforced and I saw them in action. I firmly believe in the principle of under-promising and over-delivering as the way to be a good professional. And I noticed a lot of really good leaders really manage expectations in that way. So I take great care with making sure that when I make a promise to somebody that I really can and I do over-deliver. And I think all the great leaders that I saw in business were very good at that. These are all cliche, but good cliches are there for a reason. Yeah. I believe in the power of creating a win-win situation. because relationships are the backbone of any career, if you're trying to always get a little bit over on people, then you're not going to build strong relationships. So I also just try to make sure that the other party that I'm engaged in a transaction with, I try to ensure that they get the better deal whenever possible, and that ensures growing relationships. So those are my two like core business rules that I've learned, I think, from those years and watching good leaders. And the third rule I call just be cool. And it's definitely more layered. But there are real leadership, I think, lessons within just being cool. For instance, I won't go into the whole thing, but I'll give you one example. I think being cool is absolutely remaining humble, and especially raising your hand when you don't understand something, and just saying that. And I started my career, I didn't mention this before, but I started in the mailroom at Adidas. And so I literally had a lot of opportunities. I would be sometimes in a conference room setting up a video conference for senior leaders at Adidas, and I would overhear their conversations, and sometimes I'd be called back in and I would watch them in these high level meetings. And what I noticed about the most powerful person in the room was usually they shared the least and asked the most questions, and not from a power position, but literally because they tended to be the most curious and most humble about what they knew. Anyway, there's a lot of other facets to just being cool that go much deeper than playing bongos. But I believe in those three things. And those are things I witnessed in a lot of different leaders at both Adidas and RedBull, at least the ones I admired most. And what I can say, having worked in the mailroom of Adidas in 2000, a lot of the coolest people while I was in the mailroom are now senior leaders there. And it's, so I can tell you they followed those three rules for sure. And they're in charge of the company now.
That's awesome. Under promise, over deliver, win-win, be cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And you touched on, go back for just a minute, Cody, because this is a really cool story too. You said you started in the mailroom, and I may be getting this wrong, but you also shared with me, I think you got connected at Adidas, your work at Adidas, through playing soccer with some on a team where there was a bunch of Adidas employees. So tell us about the mailroom experience and how you got started there then.
So it was 1999, and it was when Adidas was definitely so much smaller than it is today. It was, headquartered in basically like an office mall complex that I think, just very nondescript and very small. And it was emerging out of this sort of Wild West time in its history. Party hard, play hard, work hard, not a lot of rules. Definitely kind of fun for a guy just coming out of Mexico, and becoming much more of an organized business. So it was a unique time to join. But yeah, so I had just come back from Mexico. I'm playing soccer on a team that was almost entirely Adidas employees, and one of those employees was talking about how he thought it was really, he couldn't believe how hard it was to find people for the mailroom. He thought it was such a good opportunity. And I just raised my hand and I said, I've always loved Adidas, the brand. I have deep passion for sport, and I need a job. I'd love to try it out. And I had visions, there's no doubt. I had visions already of mailroom to boardroom. I thought maybe this was my chance. Now that never came even close to happening, but at least I learned a lot of lessons along the way. Had so much fun working there, and really met so many incredible people, including Molly, who I know we've already mentioned. It's funny, my first mentor at Adidas was also a woman named Molly, and she is now the head of licensing for all of Adidas. She's been there, I think, nearly 25 years.
Wow.
Learned a lot of valuable lessons, had a lot of fun. And Harper's Playground would have never come to be had I not had that 14 years of learning how to build a brand, most likely.
That's great. So let's move to Harper's Playground, but in there's another important event that occurred. You met your wife, right? What year was that when you met your wife?
I actually met my wife. The band, as we loosely called it, the band in Mexico took a 1-month break, and I flew back to Portland. And I think within 1 or 2 nights of being back home, I met her at a Halloween party. Much to my benefit, I was in disguise. And also much to my benefit, earlier in the evening, a bunch of her friends had decided she was the worst flirt among any of her network of friends. So I was the recipient of her flirtation, not because I deserved it, but because she was out to prove a point. And I think that's another really important lesson for me, and something I firmly believe in, is that you must pay attention to when luck knocks on your door and be ready for it. So I was very, very lucky. And so we had a beautiful romance, actually, in large part because it was very short. And then after less than a month of dating, I flew back to Mexico, and she and I corresponded via this new technology in 1998 called email. It was amazing. And there were internet cafes in Mexico, and it was a really nice way to fall in love. Yeah, all I can say is I'm the luckiest man in the world because I have the woman of my dreams as my partner, and the work I do is the work I would do if I was the richest man in the world. So I really have struck pure gold. And of course, Harper's Playground is very much the result of my relationship with my wife, because our firstborn child, Harper, is not only the namesake, but it's her unique and rare condition that spurred us forward to launch the movement that is Harper's Playground.
So when Harper was your first child, you have another child, Lennon, right?
We have 2 daughters.
Two daughters.
Harper is now 15 and Lennon is 11.
So maybe you want to share with us then, when Harper was born, you discovered that she had this rare condition that restricted her, or would restrict her later in life, right? And that inspired you or moved you to create Harper's Playground. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So Harper was born June 8th, 2005. And it was not until about a month and a half after her birth that we would learn about her condition, her genetic difference, which is called Emmanuel syndrome. Her birth was very traumatic. She really barely made it through her first day of life. The hospital where she was born actually brought in a priest and recommended reading her last rites. That led to a surgery to save her life. It led to over a month in the intensive care unit, where there were very, very tense moments of being close to not surviving. And at the end of this harrowing sort of 6 weeks, we were called back to the hospital where she had that life-saving surgery. And in a windowless room with very stark faces of the geneticists that had called us there, we were told that she has this rare difference that they've never heard of, but what they can tell from it is that we should expect she'll never walk or talk in her lifetime. And certainly in that moment, time stood still. I think everything also, though, became very, very clear that this little angel that we've been gifted is going to change our lives in a much bigger way than we even ever could have dreamed. And for the next full 4 years, we were really wrapping our heads around what the future would look like, while we really focused on staying incredibly present in the present moment with her. And that's one of the many gifts that Harper has brought into our lives, is an opportunity to completely embrace the present moment. And I really am a firm believer that when you're really present, nothing is ever really that bad. The present moment is always a pretty good place to be. It's kind of a safe cocoon. And so I am constantly being reminded by Harper to remain present and focused. Again, I mentioned for the 4 years because it was at her when she was 4 that she learned how to walk with this little yellow walker. And the A in Harper's playground is a silhouette image of Harper in that walker from that first walk we took in the park. And this whole story of Harper's playground really revolves around that first walk in the park when Harper became stuck in the wood chips that surround a typical playground structure. And it was my wife who said, there's no better way to put it. She said, that sucks. And that became the genesis, I think, going back to really my father's story about wanting to be in the delivery room. My entire life, I had been searching for that thing that I could fix about the world, even if it was a small thing. I don't think I ever had really found anything like being the first dad in the delivery room until this discovery of how the playground doesn't work for kids with disabilities. And that discovery absolutely for me was, okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to fix. I will change the way playgrounds are built because that's not right that kids like Harper can't really use them. And now that's a 10-year journey of building the organization, Harper's Playground, the nonprofit, to tackle that problem. But more importantly, because I believe that naming a problem is one small step, creating a vision of a solution that's just so much better, that that dismantles the paradigm of the problem, is the way to really fix it. And I don't know if that made sense, but that's what Harper's Playground is all about, is building a new model of playground that is so gloriously better than the old model that it cannot help but become the new normal, in spite of my lack of eloquence or leadership skills. It's just going to happen. And it is.
That's great. And I take it that it's the passion that you have for fixing that one thing in the world. I love the way you put that. And you founded Harper's Playground with your wife, right? Her name's April, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
And so the two of you have been working on this for the last 10 years. The other day, you said something to the effect that your goal is to work yourself out of the job. You're going to do this until there's no need for you to do it anymore, right?
We will fix the problem. Correct.
You'll fix the problem, yeah. So where do you believe you are on that journey right now? If you start point A to point B, are you 1/3? What's your sense of what kind of progress are you making?
That's such a good question. I'm going to say we're halfway there.
Halfway?
10 years in, we're halfway there. So 10 years from now, that's it. I'll be done.
What's been the most exciting, or the thing that the biggest highlight, the biggest major accomplishment that Harper's Playground has been able to achieve so far?
I don't know that I've been asked that question yet. That's a tough one.
Well, I know you've installed, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you've converted some playgrounds, right? I know that they're in the Portland metro area. You told me a little bit about the project that you're doing somewhere offshore, somewhere. Where was that?
We have a project in Tokyo, Japan, that is nearly complete and will be open. It was supposed to open in conjunction with the Olympic Games, which, like so many things in the world, obviously have been postponed. So it's most likely going to open within a few weeks in a sort of a soft opening, in conjunction with an announcement that the Olympics are going to hopefully take place 1 year from now, July of 2021. But yeah, I think so. To answer your question, and we're very proud of the project in Tokyo. I think I have to say with two things, two moments of pride. The first one is one of the first images that we ever captured from a child in a wheelchair visiting Harper's Playground. That's a moment I captured with my iPhone, and seeing our vision, our hard-fought vision come to life after 3 years, and to see it actually work for just one child in a way that felt of deep value to the world. That's a high point for me. I think because we spent several years trying to figure out what our business model was, and hoping that it would be somewhat unique and different from the other nonprofits that have historically sprung up to try to tackle the same problem and have fizzled out for one reason or another. I'm really proud that we early on decided that we would be open source with our knowledge and be very adaptive to the types of projects we could engage with. They're not named Harper's Playgrounds. We advise other groups like April and I were when we started. We give them the tools, and by and large, we do most of our work as an open source consultancy to give away the knowledge. And it's a little messy at first, but so the second point of pride I have is one of the first projects that just opened up in Iowa last summer that had the lightest amount of touch from us, but has completely come into being. And that's how I know I'll be able to go out of business, is because we're going to help teach others how to do this work rather than owning our projects and really naming them. And as a branding expert, or expert's a strong word, but as somebody who believes in and appreciates branding, it's an interesting thing to do, to give it away and to let these things exist without any sort of connection to them sometimes. But I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, it seems like branding. You're pretty good at it, at least from my vantage point. You gave a TED Talk. I'd like for you to share a little bit about that. You do a lot of public speaking, which I think comes from your heart and your passion, for doing this. So I'd love for you to talk about that. Then I want you to be able to talk a little bit about the partnership that you have with April, how the two of you work together, what works, what doesn't work, that type of thing. So tell us a little bit about your speaking that you do. You're kind of an ambassador for your cause, I think, right? And then the partnership that you have.
Well, it's interesting. In the early part of our conversation, I snuck in there that I was the student body president in my 8th grade. I actually remember giving my campaign speech, and my heart literally was coming out of my chest. I was so nervous, and I have remained a very reticent public speaker ever since then. But yeah, I did get up on stage in front of 3,000 people to deliver a TED Talk, and that was, luckily not the first time I was talking about Harper's Playground. I think public speaking becomes second nature when you find something you're so passionate about that you just really want people to know about it. You will get over your fear of talking. So I very seldom try to talk about random subjects that I'm not passionate about on stage, and I'm usually not invited to do so. But if people want me to talk about Harper's Playground, I would do it in front of a live audience of millions of people for sure, because I'm so passionate about the work. And it's funny you're mentioning April. She's actually walking in the house now. So I'm gonna close my door to keep the audio down. Our relationship works in large part, for sure. We love and respect each other as the sort of the co-managers of our family and our business in the beginning. I'm definitely the marketer and the visionary and the talker. And she is the implementer. She's the organized one. In the very, very beginning, I likely would have just talked about Harper's Playground and perhaps done nothing. But she created a to-do list, and on that to-do list included several things for me as the co-manager of our family, like household chores and so forth. but she also had a line item on there to call the Parks Bureau to get the ball rolling forward to build this playground. And so we absolutely owe what we are today to her, not only as the one who actually first thought of it. It was truly her idea, but she was the first one to create a to-do list that got us moving forward. And that's the same with Harper's Playground as it is with our family. She is the backbone for sure. I'm the flashy show, do the Zoom interviews, and she's the one getting it all done.
Well, that's a good combo then, I guess, right? Good teamwork.
I think teamwork makes the dream work. Every cliche is there for a reason, for sure. Yeah.
Who are the best partners for Harper's Playground these days? Who is it that would be the ideal partner? Because you said you don't just go build these playgrounds on your own, right? You partner with other organizations or communities or whatever. Who is the ideal partner for what you're doing, for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I would say that the partnership that leads to the path of least resistance for us, and comes to fruition the most quickly, is where the person in the highest level of leadership in the municipality has a personal connection to disability and wants to see the change happen. By and large, we tend to be called upon, sadly, by the parents of children who have not lived a long life, children who have gone too soon. And those parents, they're often of children who had disabilities, they're so passionate to do something with that pain or with that feeling. The word I would keep going back to is passion. Partners with passion for the work make the best chance for success. There's sort of course, the right setting in terms of the right location and the timing. We need to replace playgrounds that are at the end of their life cycle. There's a lot of other details, but and location specifics that make for a better location. But by and large, a passionate core group of people that buy into the vision and the mission, that's what we need to work with for sure. And luckily, there's a long list of people wanting to work with us. And also unluckily, because we wish we were out of business already. We wish that this was the norm. But again, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this work. So I'm lucky that way.
So municipalities, cities, neighborhood associations, what about schools, public schools? Yes, no?
We have prioritized the public park as our primary focus because we're building playgrounds for everyone, all ages and abilities. And the schoolyard playground is really a private space so much of the time. We want a grandparent, perhaps, who's caring for a toddler to be able to use our parks at all hours of the day, where they can't walk onto a schoolyard that way. That's just in terms of our prioritization of the projects we're focused on. We absolutely want to see schools change their model, and we work with them from time to time. When I talk about our priority, it's the ones that we invest the most of our time with and are all in. Ideally for us, like our first project and several others, the location that we choose is adjacent to a school. Community parks that are adjacent to schools make for a more vibrant setting. We also like to be adjacent to mass transportation, great natural environments like big existing trees, other amenities like covered picnic tables and sports fields. A really good, healthy community park is the culmination of a lot of great assets beyond just the play area. And really, we like the play area that we build to blur the lines between like a nature space and a plaza. One of my favorite things to hear from people who visit our parks is that they've never seen anything like it, and that they're not even sure what it is. You know, it doesn't scream out kids play area, um, and we don't want it to. Everybody needs healthy outdoor play and exercise, especially old guys like myself. I've got arthritic knees, and you know, I appreciate a good Harper's Playground now myself.
Yeah. And so you say Harper is 15. Lennon, how old is Lennon?
Lennon's 11, and she was 6 years old when she looked at me and she said, "Dad, when do I get my park?" And knowing at the time, those years ago, I would need a little time, I told her, by your 16th birthday, and we'll build it in New York City, and so it'll be named Lennon's Playground. Her name is Lennon after John Lennon. And I even told her that we'll convince Yoko Ono to pay for it. So Yoko, if you're watching the Zoom call, we need some help.
That's awesome. That's great. So you got 5 years to get that done. What is Lennon's understanding and Harper's understanding of what you're doing? If we were talking to them, what would they say Mom and Dad are doing, and why are they doing this?
I'm confident that Harper would say, "Take it easy, Dad. It's not that big a deal." She's so zen and mellow, and she remains nonverbal. So we often don't know what level of understanding she has. She understands words, and you know, I like to say, if you want to know who the smartest person in the room is, it's the one who says the least. I really believe that, and unfortunately, I talk all the time. I'm never the one who listens the best. But Harper absorbs everything. Because she doesn't speak, so I know there's an incredible wisdom there underneath her silence, and so I think she would also, you know, she would say, "Don't take it so seriously," and I appreciate that. Lennon is absolutely a pro expert in accessible design. And whenever we visit play areas that are not accessible, she points out where they're falling short. She has said she wants to take over my job. And so I am really, really proud of that fact, that she has a passion for this work. And just the other day, she actually was explaining to me at a summer camp she was attending that she noticed one of the children was not being included, and she took it upon herself to make sure that child was included because of the work that we do, and because she has a sister like Harper. So I'm a pretty proud dad, and I can say they definitely both understand the work we do. Lennon is especially passionate about it, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really neat. That's awesome. Your website, we just have a couple minutes left here, but what is the URL, the domain? If people want to go to your website, what is it?
We are Harper's Playground, all one word, .org. And we love not only people to visit, but ideally send us feedback on our design, if it's clear what we do or not. But we have a great function on the website where people can sign up for our consultancy. And that's really our portal of first point of contact with potential partners, is through the website, and people sign up to receive our free how-to book. It's a download after you just fill out a few fields. And starting with last year, we do an annual workshop where we teach our design and what we call our process, which includes fundraising, community building, navigating the red tape, or I think what we say is turning the red tape pink, and going from initial vision to a ribbon cutting ceremony for your very own playground. And I will say this, there's nothing more rewarding than being part of a team that designs and builds a playground and then opening it up and seeing it work. So I recommend everyone do it, and we'll help you.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that. We get asked when we work with management teams, we get asked, well, what would you recommend? What would be a good retreat? What would be a good team building activity for our team? And we have said, oftentimes we said service, go find some way to serve together, right? Which
Yeah,
this would be, I mean, you don't build one over a weekend, I don't think anyway. It's longer term, but it'd be a great team building activity for a management team, any kind of work team, probably, to get involved with. That's
yeah.
awesome. So Cody, I kind of feel like we've barely scratched the surface with what you have to offer. I mean that genuinely, sincerely. I think people listening to you would agree with me. The big takeaway, or one of the big takeaways for me, is what you said about how you found and decided on what you wanted to fix in the world. So for me personally, that's important for me to understand and to think about, am I putting my time towards what I really believe I should be fixing in the world? Not necessarily fixing the world, but the one thing that I can fix in the world, which I think any leader has the opportunity and the capability. Their life experience has probably prepared them to find that one thing and fix it. So thank you very much. That's very inspiring. What you're doing is really good work. Learning Point wants to support you somehow, so we'll have a discussion around that as we move forward. Just in closing, is there anything else, Cody, that you can think of that you would want the listeners of this to know about you, about your family, about Harper's Playground?
Well, I think first and foremost, thank you for having me, Mark. You are an excellent interviewer and as such a really good listener. So appreciate you listening as I drabbled on and on there from time to time. My closing remarks would be mostly focused on the things that Harper's Playground as an organization is most passionate about. Baseline, we are huge believers in inclusion. I didn't talk about that concept nearly enough, but really because we want Harper included in the world, that's why we do this work. And being more inclusive is going to benefit any organization, which means taking a look at like Harper, who doesn't speak at all, taking a look at the people whose voices are maybe not bubbling to the top and giving them an opportunity. Because when people are being excluded, it's not just the harm that's happening to them that's of a tragic nature, but and I'm borrowing this from an author who I really, really appreciate. Peter Block is his name, and he wrote a book about consulting, and he's written a book about community, and to really paraphrase his concept of inclusion, especially for marginalized people like with disabilities or any group that's being left out, that the tragedy is not just what's happening to them, but the tragedy is that the larger group is not benefiting from the gifts that they have. And when I think about the gifts that Harper brings, and all the people that have not yet had the chance to experience her gifts, it really reflects upon the value of inclusion and why social justice in general is not about doing for the other, it's about making the whole better. And that's what we should all care about. Inclusion is the baseline mission for any group that wants to make itself a healthier group.
That's great. Thank you so much, Cody. And Cody, I hope we get to do this again. I think it might be fun for you and April to do one together. So I have to see if I can talk you into that one of these days. And so thank you again for your time today, and we hope to see you soon, okay?
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.
You too.